going back to my time in the Florida legislature, I understand there's a tremendous amount of nexus between the policies that we make in DC and the state's role in implementing them. And so it really was more than anything else about an opportunity to bring up our legislative leadership in the House and the Senate, particularly those involved in the budget and education policy, to talk about some of the potential changes in federal policy over the next 6 to 9 months that could have an impact on the state of Florida, whether it's changes to Obamacare, whether it's the appropriations process on infrastructure, on the Everglades, and kind of walk them through our process and understand what the possibilities are so that they can appropriately plan the decisions they need to make in terms of Florida and its budget. I know that the President of the Senate is here, and obviously would open it up to the Congressman as well, and anybody else who may want to add something.
Yeah, well, let me just say, we've had pretty good luck in terms of our delegation, working on a bipartisan basis on flood insurance, citrus greening, veterans health care, where we can get together. We're the third largest delegation. The Senator's been a key leader in that. But we had talked maybe a month or so ago about the idea of bringing in our Florida team in Tallahassee, the President-elect, and the Speaker was here last night, and just talk about what more we can do collectively as a group. So this is really, in my sense, is a planning session. The thought was, as the Senator mentioned, we'd do something here this year or the next year in Tallahassee. But I think we'd just be that much more effective on issues. Flooding, the whole thing on water is a big issue. I'm going to talk here in a few minutes about tax reform and what that's going to mean to Florida and the country, because there is material changes in terms of our tax code. It hasn't been dealt with in 30 years. So I just would leave it, on that note, but I'm very excited about the possibilities of putting together a shared vision with the legislature as well as our delegation.
And as Senator Rubio mentioned, some of the issues that we deal with on the state level, Senator Galvano's here with me, have a direct connection to policy that occurs in Washington. And so really two major issues that I'm focusing on. One are how we can deal with the discharges from Lake Okeechobee that have really adversely affected east and west in southeast Florida and southwest Florida. And I want to thank Senator Rubio for his leadership role in getting the 10 Mile Creek Reservoir now on the state's responsibility, and will be up and running and able to store water. As most of you know, it was in litigation for literally more than a decade. And so by working together, state, local, and federal, we were able to make a significant difference and to get that reservoir up and running, which is being retrofitted as we speak. And then secondly, with Medicaid's one of the largest drivers in our state budget. So learning about the prospects for a Medicaid block grant and how that would look like. And then Senator Rubio and Congressman Buchanan have been gracious to ask for our suggestions on how, when that bill is written here and those policies are decided, how it gives flexibility to Florida so that we can have a system of delivering care to the 4 million of our fellow citizens in Florida who get their health care through Medicaid. So I think it's been very, very helpful and really continuing a good relationship on these issues.
No, absolutely. I think from the, first of all, Senator, thank you, and Congressman Buchanan for inviting us. It's something that, at least in my time in the House, hasn't been done before. But seeing that it is done, I think spending time with our Senate counterparts and our federal counterparts, and as we prepare for session, and as we prepare for the planning of the budget, and as we prepare for the implementation of whatever adjustments we might make to the Medicaid program, I think it gives all of us an opportunity to be on the same page, especially with the support of the federal government in making those decisions. So I think it's been a very productive day and a half, and I look forward to the tax reform debate.
Who else? Mike? No, has nothing to add. So. Yes, ma'am.
Senator, there are a couple of
It's mine.
Okay.
a couple of congressmen and women, probably more than a couple, especially from our side of the state, are coming tonight to the speech with people who they're going to present as people who have been helped or even saved by the Affordable Care Act. Can you just characterize what's the plans coming out? What is your position on things like the block grant or the personal health savings account and things that are really scaring a lot of people in our state that count on the Affordable Care Act?
Right. So I understand that uncertainty breeds concern, and I would, if I was someone that didn't have health insurance and I have a critical condition and now I have coverage and therefore an ability to pay for it, I want to make sure that nothing disrupts that, and so do we. I don't know anyone who's in favor of leaving people outside. question is whether Obamacare, as it's currently constructed, works well for everybody, and the answer is it does not. And so our goal is to have a vibrant private market that's affordable, and at the same time construct measures that allow us to serve people who are difficult to insure because of pre-existing conditions, because of chronic illness, it's expensive. And so when you talk about some of the things you're mentioning, Medicaid, the reason to block grant Medicaid is not to save money. That may ultimately be what happens in the long term because you get better results, because people get less sick and therefore they get healthier. But that's not the goal of block granting, and that's not the goal of it. The goal is to provide creativity, to provide flexibility, so that states can design a Medicaid program that doesn't just provide coverage, but provides better outcomes, so that when someone is actually having their care delivered in a way that makes them healthier, that allows them to be cured or allows them to be able to sustain. That is the goal, and to do it in a way that's fair to everybody. Right now, we've seen a massive transfer. You know, younger, healthier people are paying significantly more for health coverage than they were before Obamacare in many cases. And that has prompted a lot of them to drop out of the exchanges, leading to the death spiral that the exchanges find themselves in. That needs to be fixed. So I think our goal is, I don't want to go back to the old system. The old system didn't work either. And one of the reasons why we got Obamacare is because Republicans, when they were in charge of the House, the Senate, and the White House, didn't do anything about this, leading this problem. So the goal is to get it fixed, and the goal of this meeting is to ensure that whatever happens with reform up here, it is something that is fair to Florida, that has a very, very unique patient population, and a lot of our safety net providers who feel threatened by potential changes if they're not accounted for.
Have you heard any plan yet that fits those goals?
Well, I've heard elements of plans. Obviously, I have my own that I've been working on. We haven't seen a formal plan introduced by anybody yet, other than the white paper that was leaked a couple of days ago, and we discussed that a little bit yesterday, some of its details. Some of it is promising, some of it I have concerns about. And as far as this meeting is concerned, what I want to make sure is that Florida is treated fairly. For example, there is a Medicaid cliff that's going to impact Puerto Rico very soon. Puerto Rico got additional funding through Obamacare that dries up at the end of next month. If that money goes away, a significant number of people could be dropped from coverage on Medicaid on the island of Puerto Rico. And we believe a significant number of them will then move to Florida, where they can access Medicaid that's no longer available to them in Puerto Rico. That's something we can't quantify per se, but we know it will have an impact on the state of Florida. So that's an issue that other states probably aren't as concerned about as Florida would be. We have safety net providers like Jackson Memorial Hospital in South Florida that were deeply penalized a few years ago when there was a reduction in federal funding through a particular formula. That needs to be addressed. Florida has an existing waiver program for Medicaid delivery that we want to make sure that innovation and that creativity is still in place no matter what reforms come about. So, you know, we're here thinking about not just healthcare reform, but I want to know, what does healthcare reform that's good for Florida look like?
Senator, can you, speaking of the plan that the outline has sort of come out, what concerns you about that? I know some conservatives are not happy with the tax credit.
Well, I'm concerned about no, it's not. I have questions about the high-risk pool and its construction. How is it going to be funded? I do believe that we do need a system to cover people who are chronically ill with a serious illness that cannot find coverage in the private market, cannot find coverage in the individual market. They're basically become uninsurable because of a condition they have. And so what the discussion there is about a high-risk pool. And the example that's often cited is what was done in Alaska. That has to be paid for. And so how much money is going to go in it? How is it going to be paid for? And how much flexibility will states have in constructing a federal-state partnership on a high-risk pool that addresses the specific needs? The other is, how do you calculate reimbursement? I believe that you can't just say, I'm going to give you X amount of money per person. I think you have to take into account the age and the condition of the people you're insuring. Because someone who has a chronic condition is going to be more expensive to cover than someone who does not on Medicaid. That has to be accounted for in the funding formulas. So there are general concepts, but we need to see the specifics of how that's going to be funded and whether there's going to be sufficient funding available to provide those services.
Speaking of funding, if you don't mind, the president has kind of discussed, at least in broad terms, a budget plan that would significantly increase defense spending and taking away from other areas of the budget. Are you comfortable with that idea, or what's your reaction?
Well, all I've seen is media reports, so we haven't had anything officially submitted to us. You have an email, just the media reports. So I can only speak for myself. It is a significant increase in defense that I've read in the press. Not everything in the press is true these days, but most of it is. Everything
But
you
in
guys
this
say
press,
is,
in this press it is.
But anyway, the point is that all I've seen is what's in the press reports. I would tell you that the defense increase, while it's helpful, it's actually not even high enough. It doesn't reach the Gates number that we think is important to get us to where we need to be. The second point I would make is we need to see where those reductions are coming from. I believe we need to balance our budget. I do not believe you can balance your budget by only focusing on a third of your spending. It would be like saying, I can't afford my $4,000 a month mortgage, so I'm gonna get rid of my $90 a month landscaper. Well, it helps, but it ain't nearly enough. And in this case, if you start to look at some of the cuts, there's two things we have to keep in mind. The first is foreign aid and the State Department budget. That is less than 1% of our overall budget. And yet, I can tell you Florida in particular would be impacted if we were to have a significant reduction, because if you cut back on Plan Colombia, if you cut back on the Alliance for Prosperity, you're going to see an increase in migration from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, potentially Colombia if that country begins to fail, from Haiti if we have another migration impact. So as a Floridian and as an American, I believe that foreign aid isn't charity. I believe it's an important part of what we do around the world. And then there are also requirements. EPA, I have big problems with the EPA. I think it has overreached in many cases. But there are federal mandates on pesticides and all sorts of other issues that impact Florida agriculture that you have to meet these mandate requirements. And they require a review process by the EPA. And if the EPA has a massive backlog in the review process because they're not sufficiently funded, then Florida agriculture could be deeply impacted given the challenges it's already facing. Just a small scale example there. So, passports. I mean, is this going to add wait times to being able to get a passport processed? So I think what we're going to find out at the end of the day, and I know the president said he doesn't want to do it, and I'm only speaking for me. I don't speak for anybody else here. They may have their own views on this, but we need to save Social Security and Medicare. And I will not support anything that changes it for people that are on it now. But I think people of my generation are going to have a Medicare and a Social Security that will still be the best thing in the world, but is going to look different than the one our parents had. And the sooner we accept that and do something about it, the easier these decisions will become. The longer we deny it, the harder it's going to be to achieve it. So I do have concerns. I support defense increases, but the cuts can't all come from 1/3 of our budget.
This would seemingly be a perfect opportunity. You've got a Republican president, Republican Congress to do those kind of hard decisions on Social Security and Medicare. I mean, do you see it happening? It doesn't seem like there's much. I mean, certainly the president
Well, we'll see.
doesn't.
I know what the president has said, and I know what needs to happen, and I think it's important to be clear what we're talking about. I don't want these stories out there that, we want to reduce Medicare. I do not want to. My mom's on Medicare. I'm against anything that's bad for my mom. So any changes that will be bad for her, people like her, I'm against. I'm talking about me, and most of the people here, including you, our generation. It's either going to be bankrupt or it's going to work differently. And what are we talking about in some cases? I'm going to have to retire at 68 and a half instead of at 68. These are not unreasonable requests to add some longevity and stability to these programs. And I just think it's unacceptable that we've taken so long to get there, and I hope that becomes a part of our conversation. I don't expect you're going to hear that tonight, but I think in the months to come, as the reality sets in, we'll have to accept it.
What do you think we're going to hear tonight? What's the tone and the tenor? What is the goal?
Well, we'll find out. I don't know.
What do you expect? What do you hope?
Well, I mean, look, I think there's major issues facing the United States. We all know what they are internationally, domestically. And the power of the presidency to convene and unify is important. And I hope the president will use tonight as an opportunity to do that. Many of the major issues we're talking about here, Obamacare, tax reform, restoring the Everglades, require presidential leadership. You need presidential leadership to serve as a catalyst for congressional action. And so the president has a unique opportunity to do that beginning tonight. And I hope he'll take that up. I suspect, given some of the conversations I've had with him, that you might hear talk about efforts on human trafficking, potentially efforts to do things to help, for example, struggling single mothers in the workplace who could benefit from a child care tax credit and so forth, things that I proposed when I ran for president. So hopefully we've had conversations with them about that, and hopefully some of that will find its way into the speech tonight. We'll see.
Thank you.
Any consideration about town halls?
Oh, I've already, I answered that question a few days ago, and look, I always am interested in opportunities to engage with constituents in a respectful and productive way, and so we'll continue to be open to that, but as I said the other day, from what I'm seeing right now at least, that's not the direction this has gone, and so we continue to meet with people all the time, and I read letters, emails on a daily basis. I'm well aware that there is a significant percentage of Floridians who are unhappy with the president, and are supportive of many of the Obama policies. But I'm also well aware that I was elected as someone who was very clear that if I were elected, I would vote to not just repeal Obamacare, but to replace it. That I would vote to strengthen Social Security and Medicare for long-term viability. That I would vote and work to balance our budget. That I would work to rebuild our military. These are positions that I took, and there are a lot of people that voted for me because I said that. I intend to keep what I said. And if I run for re-election in 6 years and people disagree, they'll obviously have other options. But I intend to do what I ran on and what my record's been pretty clear on. But obviously, I'm always interested in learning and open to new ideas and suggestions and new issues that emerge.
Do you think, Senator, in what you've learned in studying the Russia issue, do you think a special prosecutor, as some have called for, is necessary? Are you comfortable with the way?
Not yet. Not at this time. I don't know. We're beginning our work. And what I can tell you is this. As on my work on the Intelligence Committee, I am not going to be a part of a cover-up, and I'm not going to be a part of a witch hunt. I want us to do the right thing. This is beyond partisanship. This is more than just about elections. It's about foreign governments being able to interfere with our political process. That's what I'm in favor of. And if the Intelligence Committee meets, as I believe it will do its work, in a bipartisan and serious way, we want to put out the truth wherever it leads us. And if it isn't that product, if it becomes anything other than that, a political thing to attack the president unfairly or an effort to sugarcoat what happened, I will be one of the first people out there in front of all of you telling you that I do not stand by this committee's product. But we've just started the work, and so far I remain optimistic that we're going to be able to deliver that kind of product. It's going to take some time though. I mean, this is not, we can't just put this together in 5 days. We're dealing with some pretty sensitive things. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.